My main goal is to remove the taboo. I've talked to so many people and they're like, oh man, I never talked about money with my parents at all. And I'm already trying to have really baseline conversations with the end goal of getting to the point where you can have comfortable conversation. It's a lot easier to have all those different instructive conversations if it's not a huge emotional event.
Welcome into the Get Invested podcast, a podcast about all things real estate and real estate investing, brought to you by Capital Velocity Investments and a part of the Matthias Talks Investing Substack.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to an episode of the Get Invested podcast. As always, we're excited to be here to talk all things investing, real estate and real estate investing. This is part two of a two-parter, spoiler alert, about the financial roles kind of flipping. I'm talking to my dad, Reverend Randy Stone, about what he remembers kind of as we were growing up, how he approached all those things, what his philosophies were. And now in this part, we're going to kind of talk. I don't think it's going to be the same type. It's going to be more just the situation. I don't know, thinking through I don't know, Matthias, what do you think? Like how it came about, how it feels?
A little bit.
Maybe if there's someone out there who thinks that they like, I really think that I could help my parents out, do this, that, or the other better, maybe how to approach it. And we're going to have my dad's going to be here as a sounding board of how well we're doing that. So I guess he can tell you whether or not you should listen to our advice. So we're going to launch in there. And I ended last episode with talking about how I remember there being a moment, and it was later college, when we started having more kind of in-depth conversations about money and approaches and stuff. And that's natural, right? I'm about to go on my own, all those kind of things. And those set me up in a lot of different ways. And I think it also set up a relationship where we have these kind of conversations. And I think one of the things, Matthias, that we've talked about, and way in here on this for sure, is, hey, we wish parents would talk to kids more specifically about money, kind of be more intentional about that and all the different ways that can, kind of set them up before college, for instance, before they make maybe some big mistakes. But I think one of the things that's interesting that maybe we never talked about is trying to time that right, kind of establish certain levels of conversation per age. Because I felt like that was one of the things that changed, is like now I'm in a situation where we can really have conversations. Whereas if I was just a snotty little 16-year-old who just wanted to go play basketball, am I going to really pay attention, right?
So I think my main goal is to kind of remove the taboo, remove the where we don't talk about money. I've talked to so many people and they're like, oh man, I never talked about money with my parents at all. We either had stuff or we didn't, and I didn't know why, I didn't know when or what the deal was. And I kind of, and it's some people are really hesitant to talk about it. And I'm already trying to have like really, really baseline conversations like, well, no, things cost money. And, daddy, this is why daddy goes to work. And this is why mommy goes to work, so that we can go on these nice vacations or whatever. We try to have these baseline conversations. And I want to have those conversations with the end goal of getting to the point where you can have the equal conversation where and that's a comfortable conversation. It's not hey, I got to call my parents, let's say I'm in my 30s and I got to call my parents and ask a question about money or ask about their money or something like that. And if you've never talked about it before up to that point, that's going to make it a real awkward conversation. You're probably going to put it off way longer than you need to. So I think my main goal is, yes, the financial education and learning about how, budgeting, all these different, specific topics. I think that's important, but I honestly, it's a lot easier to have all those different instructive conversations if you're used to if it's not a huge emotional event, to have some sort of financial conversation with your kids. I think that's my goal.
If there's some fluency there, right? In that language as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that transition moment, how to honestly prepare for it in a way, right? So let you weigh in on that.
Well, first of all, I do think we had enough conversations that they understood why we didn't have certain things. I mean, while we didn't plan conversations, we were honest. Kathy and I were always honest with the kids about where we were and what we could do, and how we could do it. So, and sometimes that was uncomfortable for them because, it kind of hurt at times, I guess, to say no. I mean, to hear no. I mean, and it's not nice for the parent to be saying no.
Probably. I would argue worse.
Yeah. But we had at least that much conversation. But I want to say that my dad helped me in some ways preparing for the change, because my dad was very old school, and literally it was, if you put your feet under my table, you're going to do what I tell you. Okay. Right. But on the other flip side of that, and by that he meant, if you live with me and I pay your bills, I'm going to call the shots, which is fair.
Sure.
All right. And on the other hand, though, when I started being responsible for myself and took on that responsibility as an adult to not need his help.
Not independent. Yeah.
So once I, as it were, was not at his table, okay, figuratively speaking, he stopped trying to interfere or tell me what to do. In other words, he had that down, that as long as I'm responsible, you will do what I ask you to do or tell you to do. But when I'm not responsible for you anymore, then it's not my business what you do. So he was fair on both ends of that, if you will. He didn't ask for that authoritative position when he no longer provided. And I learned from that. I mean, that, I was like, oh, okay, that's, that works.
Sure.
So as I saw my children coming to the point where they were being responsible for themselves, I felt like it was important for me to, I could not expect to have that authority, and I needed to approach them more as just another adult. And also I needed to be careful, and I have tried, I won't say I've always succeeded, but I'll say that I've honestly tried not to interfere, not to project, not to ask questions, because in a way, I'm just going to say it's not any of my business. I mean, and I don't mean I don't care.
Sure.
I do care what happens to them very much. And I try to be aware if there's anything I can do to help. But I'm also very keenly aware of the fact that my position is an adult to an adult. It's not an adult to a child anymore. And I think sometimes parents hurt themselves and their children both in two ways. One, they try to tell them what to do too much now that they're adults, and that's not good. And number two, they keep providing for them. I mean, they're being responsible, bailing them out. And as a pastor, you see parents doing that. I mean, they're what would you call it? They're catching their kids all the time. I mean, they're
the enablers, basically.
Well, or at best, they're a safety net.
Right.
At worst, they're enablers.
Yeah.
Of irresponsible behavior.
That's very well put. That's
immature behavior, which are often hand in hand, but aren't technically the same thing.
So that I think helped us move on. And, you wait, like my dad would wait till I asked him, and then he would try to phrase it in a way, well, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but if it were me, I would do this. Okay. And I always appreciated that greatly. And I took his advice far more seriously because he put it that way. Now, I don't know if I've been as good as that with my children, but that was my goal, to put it in that framework. And so as we went along, occasionally, not very often, Jordan more so than any of the rest.
That was something I was wondering about. A lot. That just crossed my mind. Like, do you have these conversations with Bethany and Lisette? And my instinct would be no, not as much.
Right. We have more. He would ask me questions about finances far more than they would. I mean, they I guess maybe because they have husbands. I don't know, but I'm not trying to answer that question really. But Jordan on his own would ask a question. Well, how did you do that, Dad? Or how did you do that? Or what happened? What was your experience, about those things? There haven't been many of those, but there've been a few of those. And then you fast forward to this time frame. I won't say this year because it's been
a couple of years.
3 years now? It's been about 3 years now. And
it was before doing this, it's been 2, but I mean, we brought you Hattiesburg, that was 22. So that was probably, if you want to talk
4
like
years
a
ago.
hallmark watershed moment where it kind of flipped.
Yeah.
That would be it.
That would be it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
So, and the thing is, I'm intensely interested. As you know, I what would you say? I faithfully watch the podcast.
Yeah.
And not just out of love and devotion to his son. If it were that, he wouldn't probably be watching. He'd show it other way.
That darn
He'd show it
Carolina
other
kid.
way.
Yeah. Yes. There would be other ways I could show him that I love him without watching the podcast. But I genuinely expect, I'm going to put the plug in here to other folks. I genuinely expect to learn something. Some of it is, I've heard it before, but it's reminder. And then there's an addition that comes there, and I'm looking for that addition. I still want to learn. And I think the two of you are qualified to teach me. So there might have been a day when I was doing the teaching, but now, and so I'm seeking information. I'm not necessarily, yes, I am looking for advice, but ultimately, as Jordan can tell you, and he would be the same way, I'm going to make my own decision.
Sure.
That's just who I am. And, I have that enough confidence and independence that I'm going to do that. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to listen to what I'm hearing, because I want to make the best decision, and I need the best information and understanding to make that decision. You two are now in a position to provide that. And I'm doing everything I can to literally soak it up. And he can tell you from conversations we've had, even since I've been here, I'm still trying to, what would you say, find ways that I can bring together funds to be ready for the next investment, and to, understand, because while I am doing this to a certain extent for 8 years from now, I'm trying to build toward 8 years from now, when the Social Security thing's I don't know what it's going to do. But anyway, that's the point. I don't know what it's going to do.
Sure.
I'm also looking for, as Jordan can tell you, and he's shared some things about that this week, some income, building that regular stream of income that for as long as we can, we're just going to save that and roll it back in. But we do want to see it happen.
I will say that one, I did ask, I guess I didn't realize I was just more interested in it than, I don't know, the average bear or whatever. I would say that, as I would speak to your whole, like, trying to change your, not butting in, not whatever, I would say as someone who has a long history of telling you to step off when I think that you're overstepping, I would say that I don't remember really any scenario, for the most part,
on the financial side.
I felt like it was intrusive, once we got to that point at all. And I was always interested to ask you, because I felt like you had done a lot with little, for the reasons that we've discussed last episode. So it was interesting, a natural kind of transition in that regard. That, and it was mostly conversation, right? Which is what we always aim for on the podcast too, is conversation. So that's what was good about it. But yeah, Matthias.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting because we didn't talk much about I'm trying to think back to, like, when I was in college, going through college, and then getting into the Air Force and starting off on all that. I don't really remember asking too many financial questions, or even having too many financial conversations. It was we were fully in the stage where it was like, hey, Matthias has got it. They instilled that philosophy in, and so they didn't have to worry about me. Maybe perhaps they were worrying about some of my younger siblings, calling them out right now. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I do remember, like, the first time, just because they watched my parents, we talk all the time. We've never had times where we were on the outs or anything like that. So, they were keeping appraised of my life, and, we started buying houses and investing in houses, and then, buying a few more and moving on to bigger investments. And, they watched the progress. And so, like, eventually, I believe at some point my mom, because my stepdad, Jim, was one of our biggest investors in our first syndication.
Oh, that's interesting.
And because he had IRA funds. He had IRA funds that had been sitting around forever, that he was like, man, I know there's something better that I could do with these. And so, Mom and Jim and they called and we'd talk. And I remember one time sitting on the couch and they kind of busted out all the old statements and we were looking through. And this is as I was learning about self-directed IRAs. And I was like, no, I actually think there's a really good, you guys have a real, because, he'd been it was from an old, but he had contributed for years up to whenever, he'd moved on to a different company or different contract or whatever. So I was like, this is significant. Like we can absolutely do stuff with this. And I remember having those conversations, and that was around the time, like I said, around the time we started bringing on investors, and friends and family is where we, obviously where we started. And that was probably the watershed moment there, is when they busted out those old statements and just kind of handed them to me. It was like, hey, what do you think? And, I'm looking through the returns that he'd gotten over the years, and I'm like, no, we can absolutely beat these. And, and they were just kind of sitting. The options weren't there for them to be able to do like real growth or whatever. So at that time where they showed me. So I remember having those conversations. And then on the other side, I remember my dad, he's watching the same progress, and he'd occasionally call and ask, hey, we're working with this, maybe there was, this loan versus that loan, or this type of product or that type of product. And he started asking similar questions too. And then, it kind of just grew from there, I'd say, to more this like, hey, they knew this is what I what I was interested in, what I was educating myself in for, and then, both on my own and also, with the MBA and all that stuff that I was doing, the real traditional education continuing, it was natural for them at that point to be, we'd have that as adults, hey, Matthias, this is what you're into. What do you recommend for this? And I'd be like, well, you could do this, you could do that. It would be that same conversation. Like, well, if it was me and I was in your situation, I would probably do this. And vice versa, so I do remember those watershed moments, but it was just always, I feel like it was inevitable with me going this route, that because I feel like nobody else cares as much about investing as I do. Like nobody does. So I'm the natural curiosity somehow to that kind of the financial world and finding new ways of doing this, that, and the other. So it was going to be inevitable, and they were family, so they trusted me that I wasn't a snake oil salesman or something. So it worked out pretty well.
I think that part, if I can just stick in here, what you just said, trust. You've got to have trust in the individual, especially when you talk about what the two of you are doing, okay? And
sure,
the others, because you can't just go out and find anybody down the street, some office, walk in an office and say, hey, I want to start investing with you. I mean, that's hard, especially when you're my age. But sure. I do trust you. I've known him from birth, and I've known you from what, 2 or 1?
Yeah, 2.
Two.
I think it was 2.
And
yeah.
So, and I hear you talk, and this is another thing too. When I hear you talk about this, this is real. This is genuine. What the two of you are wanting to do, and it's not. I've lived long enough that I recognize snake oil when I hear it.
I'm sure.
And, when I hear you folks talking about this, it's real, it's genuine, it makes sense, it's careful and cautious, but yet it is, you're willing to put yourself out there some, and I know you can't make money unless you do.
There's got to be risk.
That's right. Thank you.
By the way, I did not put him up to this shameless plug for our trustworthiness.
Yeah, that's good.
That's
right. He's not reading from a teleprompter right now.
Yeah.
I think folks.
He's like, they are very trustworthy. But Matthias, it's interesting. Both you and Dad, basically, it was kind of let him come to you, almost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Type of thing, where Dad was saying he tried to let it be that way when it was, when I was getting older. Or I guess the kids in general, but it just ended up being me that we had the conversations. And then you were kind of, your moments that you remember were really them just coming because you had been doing something. And you're right. Now that you're like once you went full into it and in whatever phase you want to put, I mean, that's like a doctor showing up at a party and someone be like, I have this pain right here. Yeah. Like, can you,
does this look right?
Like, yeah, this is what you do. Let me ask you a question. Right. So,
yeah.
But I wonder, what do you think about situations where, are there any good situations where you go to them, right? Rather than it being, you let the cat come to you. You don't like go get the cat is the cliche. It's not actually true. But anyways, is there a situation where you can be, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, this is something I don't know if I really have any thoughts because it doesn't seem like something I would do really. But
what do you mean? Like go to
trying to insert myself in some form or fashion.
Rest of the family.
Yeah, into somebody else's. Yeah, like
yeah. Well,
hey,
my siblings
I really see what you're doing. Can I please?
Can I help you? Yeah, let me
get in here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Can I share what we're doing? And I'm
for a lot of that, it's way more their own
basic
riding the ship first before it's any about what we're doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't want to call people out, but I'm just saying that was really more my question was there because there's of course hey, we have an investment opportunity, but there's also just because I wanted this to be more generally just having the conversations about the stigmas, the taboos that go along with having conversations about money. And then if you're uncomfortable or there's shame involved, because that's one of the things, right? Like in some form or fashion, shame gets involved because you can feel like you're not doing it right or doing enough or whatever the case may be.
Or you're interfering somehow.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on like the activist intervention?
On either side, even. It could be, either the parent or the child. I think
that's got to be done carefully.
Yeah, exactly. And anecdotally, I'm much more interventionist with my siblings than I think I ever could or would be with my parents. Just because, well, one, I'm a big brother, right? So I feel like I have responsibilities to kind of impart knowledge onto my younger siblings anyway. But I think that's a good question of when on the parent or on the child side. I mean, realistically, I feel like you have to if you know you can help with something and you're going to know, right? Like, hey, I think I heard that mom is doing, I'm making this up. This is not true, but I heard that mom's, paying for this type of insurance, which is way overpriced and just not going to get the benefit that, I'm making this up, but she's doing something that I know is financially unsound. I would call and I'd say, hey mom, I've heard tell me about this. And then I'd let her talk through it. And then I'm thinking of my mom and I'm like, she would immediately go, hey, what should I do? She does that all the time, but I'm just saying in that event where we didn't have that relationship, you'd have to call and say, hey, explain to me this situation. And oftentimes I feel like just that conversation will, if they hadn't already noticed that something is probably not right, that'll help. And you know what I mean? Like the little fuzzies in the back of your head will start going off. I think that's something that that's how I would try to do it if I needed to. I'd be like, hey, tell me about this scenario. And then, you can ask expanding questions and almost just through questions lead them to, maybe thinking of a different path per se. But I feel like on the parent to kid side, that may even be tougher. Just because they're going to feel like this, like the discussion we were having earlier, like they may feel like hey, you don't get to tell me what to do anymore. I don't live at home. You don't provide for me. But, the parents going, hey, you're paying this much for rent at this place and you're basically getting ripped off by this, that, or the other. How do you, I don't know. That'd be a very tough
gently
one. Yeah. Well, you'd almost, cause there's some anecdotal, I won't get into it, but there's some anecdotal stuff involving people that I'm very close to that like where the parent basically would kind of do research and pass a little bit of research on this, hey, just not for nothing. Here's what this is. Here's some things that you might be interested in, almost as an alternative to what they're currently doing, that kind of stuff. And I think that honestly, that might be a way. It's just like, hey, do you know that this other stuff is out here, or these other options are out here in ways? But it's also really hard. Again, the kids are at some point. The more more the parent tries to stick their fingers in there, the more resistance that you may need. But you also don't want to just step in and start making all the decisions. Maybe some sort of rock bottom point. You need hey, let's set a baseline and then step back out. That's hopefully many people don't have to deal with that, but I can see that being a thing too. I don't know.
I think we've kind of reverted back to the direction of the last episode, but
yeah,
because I think
sure.
Not to be too sociological about it, but a couple things. One, it is a more natural parent a kid in general, right? And even
Sure.
if they get older, it
Just
seems
wisdom
more
and life
natural.
lessons. Yeah, yeah.
And then the fact that that's your kid, you know, like, so when it switches is when, you know, it's out of order. If it, as it were, not really, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, oh, that's
It
different.
can get
Yeah.
out of order.
But the other thing is these days with demographics and such, you know, things being that the way there are, there's more and more older people who need help navigating stuff. And not even necessarily because they're like, you know, losing their faculties or are that, you know, they're it's just, there's a lot to navigate.
Sure.
Right. It can be a lot to navigate, whether that be end of life stuff, care stuff, insurance stuff, transitioning to different types of living arrangement stuff. Like, so it's, and I think that I think it's always kind of, I just imagine for the most part, maybe I've just read too many novels about inheritance, but you know, as one in my line of work used to have to do, that there's just like, you don't want to do it, and then there's just like a rupture and you have to do it. And it seems like, is there a better path, you know? Right. So
for sure. Yeah.
With having to step in versus like, hey, I've been here all along helping you, and not necessarily helping you because you require my help, but
sure,
because I can provide a resource.
Yeah.
I've got two things that I'd like to share that he's brought up here. One is, I think that Kathy and I are at the point where we're going to have to put all this stuff on paper, and the children are going to have to be aware. I don't want to wait till something happens and then they have to scramble to put this stuff together.
Yeah.
Where is this? Where is that? Frankly, in the last few years, we don't have a lot of money, but we have money in a lot of different places. And you don't want them to not know where that is. I mean,
sure.
Whether we've passed already or we need their supervision or their help in finding what we need, like care or whatever. All right. The other side of it is this. I spent a lot of years, what I did have invested in, I think you call it equity market. Okay. The traditional IRA in the market, blah, blah, blah. I wish that I knew about and understood multifamily dwelling investment 30 years ago. We would be much better off financially if we had been aware of this 35 years ago. Now, granted, we would have been able to do less with it. It would have taken time. But I think we could have grown wealth so much faster and so much more dependably, because I know folks think, well, I've got it in my IRA and it's invested in this company or this mutual fund, which is what I was usually invested in. But I'm going to tell you, that market takes you on a merry ride. And I had the tolerance and I had the discipline not to be foolish. But still, it did not produce over the years what I think this program produces. So you can call that a sales pitch or whatever you want to call that, but it's just how I feel about it, looking back and looking at what we're doing now.
So I mean, Matthias, I want you to jump in here, but I was just going to make a distinction. I think one of the things that's interesting is talking to your parents because you think they're making a mistake and trying to bring them something to push them kind of out of the comfort zone. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like what he's talking about, right? Like they've never done anything wrong, but they've always been just way too conservative or kind of just let it slide. Like they're not being irresponsible. They're putting money in it, but they're not really thinking about it. They're not really, you know, you could do more.
Could be doing better. Yeah.
So those are two different things. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's why I do this, is because I believe that as well. I believe I can do way better with apartments and multifamily than I can anywhere else, which is what we're doing here. Yeah. But on your first point, my mom is really struggling with it. Not struggling, I want to say that, but she's dealing with this right now. My grandparents are in a home, and my grandpa needs round the clock 100% care, and they were not set up to where it was an easy transition. So my mom has been, I mean, she had to clean out their house, found cash hidden all over the house. It's crazy stories. If you ever talk to my mom, like she'd be like, "Oh, it's insane the places where she found cash." But then
that's who we are.
Yeah.
Did her parents? They're not old enough to have lived through the Depression. They were like right after.
I don't believe so. They're in their, I want to say late 80s, early 90s, if they at their age. Her parents are.
Almost just after.
30s,
yeah. So they're up there. They're close. So I mean, we're not talking like huge sums or anything. It was just, a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there kind of thing. Yeah. And who knows how long they've even been in these random boxes. So she had to sell their house, and she had to, she's been working Medicaid and stuff on their behalf, and all these like a bunch of legal and just, and she's already told me that it has prompted her to begin, because she's like, I'm never going to put you guys through this kind of thing. And it's not, I'm not trying to say that her parents or, my grandparents did that to her on purpose. It's just, this is what happens if it's not, you're not intentional about setting up where the, there was insurance policies that mom would just find a document, and she was like, what is this policy? And then she'd have to like call and get all sorts of, like, use the power of attorneys to get, because they're not just you can't just call up, I have a policy number, So, I mean, she had to go through all these things and find all this stuff that she had no idea where everything was. So mom has been dealing with this for the past 2 years of trying to kind of, one, make sure that they're getting the care that they need, and two, trying to unravel what what all is going on there. And so it's a task, and she'll tell you she's, like I said, she's already intimated that she's never gonna she's gonna do everything she can to not have us have to kind of unravel her life, whenever it gets to that point. So it's not nothing. That is a legitimate, and it's very stressful too. She's, not only are you really coming to terms with the fact you're losing your parents, but now we got to figure out how to take care of them and make sure that something they worked for their entire life isn't just gone off into the ether or something. So I get it. Yeah.
And I don't like trusting insurance companies to answer those questions straightforwardly. That might be unfair of me, but I'm like, I don't want them having to call the insurance company to find out if this is current.
Yeah.
They may get a wrong answer for whatever reason. I want them to already know when they call, hey, this is legitimate.
Exactly. To be more, not a passive trying to find out, but more active and say, hey, you owe us this because of this, that, and the other, versus, hey, I just got this number from a letter I found in mom and dad's drawer. Yeah.
Right.
Which would be tough. Yeah. Exactly.
Because Kathy and I currently still have insurance, life insurance, and it's significant enough that you would not want to let that get away.
Sure.
So you've got to have it. And I've been acutely aware even recently that it's not as accessible as it ought to be. And another situation is that even over the last 2 years, we set up things in a trust, and you get all this stuff together. But then over the last 5 years, or probably so since we did the trust, it's been at least 5 years, maybe 6 or 7, things change. Money moves. It's not in the same place. And I'm like, oh, wow, Jordan would be aware of some of it because it's company stuff.
Sure.
But I realized that, wow, man, so many things have changed. We got to make this clearer.
Yeah, that's a tough conversation, I guess, to just kind of approach a parent on. Hey, are you preparing for when you pass on? I mean, that's basically what we're talking about, but
well, maybe my generation
for the next stage in your journey.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be.
I don't know. I mean,
do you think that would be like, how would you take that? I mean, we never had that because you were already doing it on your own, but what do you think? Like, well, you've got people I know that you have people that you talk to that you have given advice to for years that probably are in a scenario where they need to be more proactive.
Well, I can tell you, I had last year in January through into March for about 2 months.
Oh, right.
I ended up with a 96-year-old man with no children and no designated person And I had to step in for a while, actually until he passed. I became responsible for his stuff. And wow. And there was no plan. I mean, there were some plans about he had provided, but there was no plan to how to handle that until his death. I mean, he had a will, but until he died, a will doesn't take effect until you die.
Right.
So
right.
Who's going to do this? And I ended up, and you're right, you're dealing with him and trying to comfort him because he's having to move to a nursing home, and that's a hard transition, and you understand all that. And then also you're trying to unravel his finances, and you've reached a point where he's not as coherent.
Yeah, he can't help you.
If we'd have done this, if he would have helped me with this 6 months ago and prepared me to do this for him, we'd have been in a better situation. But now I'm trying to get a lawyer to give me power of attorney. Anyway, that's enough to tell you about that situation. But I understand what your mom's going through. I'll put it that way. I really understand what she's going through. But I think that I would think my generation would be a little more receptive, though, to you saying, listen, I just want to ask you a question. You don't have to tell me anything if you don't want to or whatever. But are you planning so that if something happens to you, we will know what to do and where to find things?
That's a good
I think
way to
that's
put
a fair question if asked kindly to say, are you, we're not trying to tell you what to do with your stuff. It's not that we want to interfere, but we just want to know that if something happened to you, we would know where to find it. And we would know what your instructions are.
Yeah. The just not knowing in general. I would think, and we're going to wrap it up here. I was just thinking about it, like, we're starting to try to think early about getting some things in order now, just in case. Maybe you can bring it up through that. I don't know. What do you think with that? It's like, hey, we're looking at how we can set up things in case this happens, that happens, and wondering what you were doing just to get some, get some thoughts or some advice. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the risk you run, right, is that you start sounding like you're trying to get your fingers into their stuff before they go, and they're like, hey, make sure.
I really don't want to tell you what to do, but I want that Chippendale armoire.
Yeah, something along those lines. That's the risk. But I mean, like exactly what my mom's dealing with is that, I think the best way to ask is like, hey, will we know what you want us to do in the event of that happening?
That's very good.
How will we know what you want us to do? And is there a process? Who should we contact? Nobody really wants to have that conversation because it brings up thoughts and fears that you just don't want to deal with. And hopefully, it'll be a long time before you do. But I think that's the best way to do it. I think your phrasing was perfect. And like, hey, I need to know what you want. And is there something set up so that I can figure out what you want in the event something happened? And I think, and with as many, and the problem is the Alzheimer's and some of these horrible, dementia and things like that, is like that person, frankly, they're gone. And they cannot. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and that stuff comes on real quick sometimes. So the reality is you got to have it sooner rather than later. And hopefully it's a non-issue. And I, like I said, my mom's bound to determine now that everything's going to be wrapped up in a nice bow whenever, the inevitable happens, I suppose. But that conversation it's just got to be informational. I think that's the way. It's like, hey, let me help you. One of those, right? Help me help you. Make sure I can help you.
You mentioned if something happens. The truth is, it is going to happen.
Inevitable.
And it's a matter of being prepared for it. And I think that's maybe my mindset's a little bit different in that category, but I know it's going to happen, and I know they need to be prepared. And that's
the
practicality of it, I guess.
Yeah. Inevitable, unless the singularity, we can download our consciousnesses to machines. Otherwise, yeah. All right. Well, I've just wanted to make at least one joke because that was real heavy coming down on that landing.
Yep.
That was real bumpy.
Something good.
We didn't really, that wasn't just you. I mean, that pilot did not pull the nose up appropriately on that
improper
landing.
flare.
Yeah,
Insufficient flare is the technical term.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, we hope you enjoyed listening. I know this was great for me.
I had a good time.
And it was good stuff. Definitely a little switch up from the normal, which I think is definitely never a bad thing. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you want to reach out with questions, comments, thoughts, opinions, stats, we've gotten all of these. You can always comment on the Substack posting. You can comment on the Spotify, the YouTube. You can DM us on LinkedIn. You can email us at Jordan or Matthias at capitalvelocityinvestments.com. You can up the chat bot on the website, all the ways. We'd love to hear from you. And we really appreciate you hanging out with us. And we hope you come back next week for another edition of the Get Invested podcast.
See ya.
Keep up the good work.